Stripling and Etruscan, addicts of drugs not yet synthesized, black marketeers of World War III, excisers of telepathic sensitivity, osteopaths of spirit, investigators of infractions denounced by bland paranoid chess players.
So what's going on? So we have a friend of ours in studio right now. Well, it's not really in studio. I'm sorry.
His face is in studio.
I feel like he's in studio. He was in studio last week when Clint was on vacation. What's up? We got my buddy Mark. Mark, what's up, Mark?
How's it going? Mark Palmer, Steeves. People know me by a bunch of names, but yeah, Mark Steeves. Let's go.
So Mark Steeves, if any of our listeners don't know, they should know by now. Mark is the booker for most of Sam's podcasts, Sam Tripoli's podcast.
All the interesting ones.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours here at the dojo, and the conversations we have in our dumpster garden here are so interesting that we were like, we just have to have a podcast already. So it's not we're just gonna have a great conversation right now. It's episode 33. If anyone knows about numbers, it's an interesting number. And well, I'm so excited to have Mark on, and we're just gonna rap, and we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna just talk about shit going on. Mark, what's going on, man? What's going on in your life? What's going on in the world that you would like to talk about?
Well, first and foremost, it's a pleasure to be here. Like you said, I was in the studio. It's a great place. I mean, if anybody's in the area, I definitely recommend them coming down to your place and having a meal, checking out a show. I don't know if you advertise the actual spot in the show, but either way, loved being there. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, Mike and Clint. And is Yusuf there too or no?
No.
Yusuf said that the lights were out, so he went to an open mic. So we can we'll put him on blast. That was the text. I was like, hey man, I was talking to Flat Earth Dave right before Mark got on. I'm like, where are you? He goes, the lights were out. So I'm like, dude, you know how to get here. But we love Yusuf. He's a big part of this show. He helps me, and we're digging on him in a nice way. But yeah, he's not here. He's at open mic, and hey, he's working on his craft.
That's a comedian way, right?
No, he's got to
make fun of him.
He's got to do what he's got to do. No, listen, I'm happy. Hey, if he said he's playing Call of Duty, I would be blasted him right now. He's,
well, that's fine. I mean, like you said, he's a comedian. I'm a podcaster. I think I came into podcasting by accident. Like, I remember, I really started questioning everything I believed in when I first smoked weed, right? Mm-hmm. As most people do.
Yeah, right.
But I'd always had like a very curious and questioning mind, and even before I smoked weed, there was a lot of things that I was interested in that most of my peers weren't. So I definitely had this feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm a little different, I'm a little strange, right? But I hadn't gotten into like actually what was strange about me until after I smoked weed, and I realized like, oh, okay, this is where I'm going. What I mean by that is my intuition opened up on a whole new level, right? Yep. It was like the slate was wiped clean, and I just got familiar with this smell that I'd never smelled before, right? And I just mean that in a metaphorical sense, and like certain books would have that smell, right? So my intuition was guiding me towards certain books, and now I have, like, as you can see, like way too many books to even read in a lifetime. But I think my point here is like, I've always been someone seeking this kind of truth out, and so many experiences led me to different books, and then eventually podcasting somehow, right? And I think it was like Joe Rogan or something that led me to listen to like Bert Kreischer, and then like Bobby Lee, and then I see Sam Tripoli on Bobby Lee's podcast, and I'm like, oh shit, who's this guy?
Who's this fucking clown?
Yeah,
saying a lot of shit that's real.
Yeah, and then I put the two and two together that he's the Tinfoil Hat podcast, and I saw, because I had seen that podcast in like the podcast app that I just downloaded recently. I'm like, that's interesting. I just subscribed to it. I didn't listen to it, but then I see him on like a YouTube show, and I'm like, oh shit, like this is where it's at,
Resonates,
So, that's what just opened the door, because he had so many other podcasters on his show that I just found, like Greg Carlwood and Grimerica and all these other really awesome. What's that?
Duncan Trussell in the early days he had, and recently, but yeah, Duncan Trussell and yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have thoughts on Duncan. I think he's very interesting. I liked his podcast, but I think there's like so much intro that it just I don't know. I skipped the intros with his. Nothing against Duncan. I know Sam really loves him. But
I love Duncan Trussell too. That's how yeah. Okay. But yeah, I love Duncan. No, yeah, but that's the Heaven's Gates intro. You know that song?
What? Oh, really?
You know that?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like he does like
but the heavy
skits,
intro. But the song. Oh yeah, I know what you're saying when he's like doing the whole like with his synths,
the creepy voices.
Yeah, with the synthesizers and all that. But like the song. You know that song?
I think
I'm not gonna. I'm about to sing, but I'm like realize
that
we're on air, so I'm not gonna do it. Like if this was just a conversation of us on the phone, I would do it. I'm not gonna do it because other people will listen to it. But you don't know the song?
It's been so long since I've actually listened to Duncan.
All right, well that's the Heaven. That was the. I always thought it was annoying too, and I always fast forward. And somebody else who I admire was explaining to me about Duncan's podcast that song that he makes that's his theme song is actually the song that Heaven's Gate they played before they all drank that Kool-Aid.
Oh my gosh! See, yeah, this
so
is
he
like
played.
Stuff.
Yeah, no, it's creepy. It's very creepy, and like that's the dark side of me. I'm sorry if anyone who's listening is like, okay. Oh my god, because there is a dark side of me. To me, I was like, that was so cool when I found that out because it's an annoying song, and it's terrible what happened with that whole thing. But yeah, that was. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, this brings up a lot for me.
I might have really fucked this all up. Hold up.
No, Duncan's great, and he doesn't need to worry. You don't need. He's great. We're not talking shit about him. I definitely think his.
No, I love Duncan Trussell. Like, if he ever wants to perform here, anything, like, I love him. He is one of my favorite people, and yeah, whatever. I thought I took like right away. I thought you would be a big Duncan Trussell fan. That's crazy.
No, I'm not against him. I listen to his show.
You hate Duncan Trussell?
This is the clip. The clip. Mark. Whatever. It's not even. But yeah, you and I. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It does kind of tie into what I've talked about on podcasts before, because like Duncan's one of these guys who has a character like Damien Eccles, who used to be, in jail for murdering people, and now goes on podcasts talking about magic, right?
Yep.
So
yes,
and he's talked about Aleister Crowley on his show as if he's some sort of folk magic hero, and so I don't have anything against Duncan. I think he's just fascinated in the morose, like the kind of
I think he's just into the occult, is what if I had to ask.
But and so am I, but I think there's a side of the occult that's more focused heavily on the macabre, right? That's the word I'm looking for. Death, right? Yes. So me personally, I'm more of a, like, how do we like solve these problems? How do we find the light? And like, where's the good in everything?
Yes.
And I think sometimes, that's not the message that's received when you listen to some of these like horror or paranormal.
Dude, I gotta agree with you. Mark. I have to agree with you. And like occult and maybe macabre is what got me in as a young guy. You're younger. When you told me your age, I was like, wow. So I do understand, but it's like, but at the end of the day, I always say on this podcast, it's all about intent, right? It's all about intent. I get shit a lot for this podcast, not this podcast, even just for the comics that come into this room about their message. And I'm like, but you know what? I know their intent. They don't come here with bad intentions. If anybody ever came here with bad intentions, I'm not going to give them a platform. I know that goes against the free speech model, but I've never met all these people that I've seen people say terrible things about online, whether they're racist or they're this or that. I know them as humans, and if you come at me with that bad energy, you're not going to have a platform. Just because it's not even a free speech thing at that point. It's like, I just don't want you in my world. And and the occult and macabre. That's an interesting topic that you brought up, because macabre and occult can sound the same, yet they're so different. They're so different. Macabre is more dark death. Occult is hidden knowledge, and somewhere they
Absolutely.
kind of meet in the middle, right? And you can, because I've been called, oh, you're a devil worshiper, you're a saint. I've been called all of that, from especially sending my friends who needed to get saved. So I sent them to some ayahuasca retreats, and the first thing they'll say on this podcast, they want to come on here to almost laugh with me, saying, the second I drank the medicine, I saw the skull on the altar, I Mike sent me to a devil worshipping fucking, and they'll say that, and they're like, no, once it all ended, I realized, oh my God, that, but you know what I'm saying? Because you're right, the macabre and the occult, it's this weird cross where if you're brainwashed, they're the same thing. They're not at all. And that's a great way to start this fucking show.
No, and I think that was why I did an episode on Aleister Crowley with Sam, as you know, because I was like, hey, look at all these podcasts that I'm listening to. Mm-hmm. I hear about Aleister Crowley. There's like 3 or 4 people who talked about him as a topic to talk about, aside from podcast hosts. I think there's a difference. There's like a group of people who are either authors, or I don't know if they're researchers or bloggers or something, but they talk about Aleister Crowley, right? Yeah. And some of them just had this opinion of him that I thought was like strange. They almost looked at him like a folk hero, and I'm like, okay, I can see where he's inspiring, right? I have many of his books, but when you actually read his books, there's this darkness that is inside of it. It's very egotistical. He's an egotistical man, and then you learn about his life, and he, by all accounts, was not a kind person. He was kind of abusive to the people he claimed to love, and he was doing these sexual rituals because he had felt like, the strict Christian upbringing that he had undergone in England was supposed to be flipped upside down and made, terrible, which I think was a fine reaction, right?
Yeah,
he was put under this unnatural pressure, but he took it to a huge extreme of like, I'm going to be fully perverted because those people suppress me so hard. I mean, he literally had sex with one of the women that Jack the Ripper ended up murdering, and then later in life met Jack the Ripper and took one of the bloody cloths from that woman and kept it as a token. And he had slept with that woman because she was one of his family's like chambermaids, and obviously after Aleister Crowley was found by his mother banging her, fucking her on the bed, they fired her and she became a prostitute. And who gets murdered? Prostitutes, right? Especially in London in those times.
That time.
So, Crowley, right from a young age, was enveloped in this weird, dark underworld. And as you know, as a conspiracy theorist, like wealthy people tend to be, in these.
I don't identify as that.
Well, they tend to be in these weird circles, and have strange practices that are exclusive to those who can afford to be in those groups.
True. That's true. And listen, Crowley is a interesting. That's an interesting topic, and I remember listening to your episode on Tinfoil Hat, and there was a time in my life that I defended Crowley because so much art was done in the name of him. So I had to do a deep dive, and like you said, and it goes back to what I always say, his intent was wrong. He was definitely, at least, once again, I never met the man, I have no idea, but from everything I've read, the guy's intentions were always wrong. He did mess with a lot of occult and not even a cult might be a bad word, but he messed with a lot of, let's call it even New Age principles that we all in this community focus on, but his intentions were wrong. And that's kind of always a thing, right? Like just muddying the waters, just dirtying it up. I always use the swastika as an example, right? I mean, it's like it is it's a sign of peace in some
Ancient cultures.
in
It's
some
also
cultures,
like
but it's also like
astrotheology symbol. Yeah.
yeah, and then in our culture, especially American culture, like it's like the worst symbol, right? So like, but that's like the easiest like symbol. But there's so many symbols and terms and practices that have been dirtied and muddied, and Crowley is like literally the person to look at where he just fucked shit up, where like things that might have been good, he really turned into dirty and bad, or right? I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, now I might do something that might, make me seem like a hypocrite, but I will say, like, as bad and as dark as his life was at some points, I mean, his intentions weren't one way or the other. I think, ultimately he was fallible, like every man is.
Yeah.
I think he learned powerful things and used them irresponsibly, which led to him living a kind of unfortunate life and dying an unfortunate death, being addicted to heroin and not really having much to say for his accomplishments other than all these books that he didn't make any money off of, right? So I think his intentions as a young man might have been like, oh yeah, I'm going to take all this really cool spiritual wisdom, I'm going to put it together under one system, and I'm going to use it to create this new era where everybody's, these ideals and these are my ideals. And he took it so far, and I think he's inspired people who have taken that idea of like, yeah, we can be gods too, right? You recognize what I just said there? We can be gods too.
Yeah.
That's like every Christian will tell you, like, that's
the one that fucks me up, Mark. I'm happy you brought that up.
Yeah, and because every Christian will tell you, like, well, the Satanists and Luciferians, they want you to think that you're God,
Dude, that's the shit that gets. That's where I was saying, where I send my friends to ayahuasca, and at the end of the day, it's like that you are your own God, and you bring that shit up, and it's still like I have been closer to Christ in the last 2 years or 5 years, I'd say, than I've ever been. But I'm saying things like this, and they're telling me, "Nah, you just close to Lucifer." Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this upside down world, and like you're hitting it, man. You're hitting exactly where I'm trying to go.
Well,
like,
and I think there is this disingenuous nature to that impression of what Crowley was saying, because if you looked at the average person in his times, what he was doing kind of made him a god compared to most people. Yeah. But I don't think that means he thought he created the universe, or that he created the angels and the demons that he tried to, take control of in his rituals that ultimately failed him. Because by some accounts, I mean, I consider myself, someone who researches a lot of this stuff, and from some opinions they're like, oh well, Crowley wasn't really a great ritual guy. This is what some of the OTO and people who've been in the Golden Dawn say, like, oh well, he wasn't even really good at rituals, he kind of just took it and ran with it. And then there's other people who are like, no man, like he's the only person to ever meet Charizard, the real and you hear Sam Tripoli go like, Abraxas, the chicken snake god, and like that was one of the gods that, he didn't call it the chicken snake god.
No, I've met that shit, but yes.
But, in the Sahara Desert, he did this ritual where he essentially called upon Abraxas, right? So, these are the types of things that Crowley was doing. Some people say he wasn't great at it. Some people say he was good at it, but
people call him a hack. He was a fucking hack.
I don't know, and I don't want to be in the position to defend him or make him sound great, because I don't think he was that great. I think he did inspire a lot of people to.
Well, clearly he inspired. Clearly he inspired something. Is it good? Is it bad? Who the fuck knows? It's like we just finished up our episode of Flat Earth. Like, why? Who knows? Is it good? Is it bad?
Well, there is some importance to it, though. I mean, I wouldn't take it that lightly, because I mean, pedophilia pederasty, those are real crimes.
True.
I mean, those are
true,
those
and that's
have
horrible,
victims.
and that's
It's horrible.
disgusting. Yeah,
And these are the
that's-
types of things that Crowley wasn't just like talking about. He was writing about it.
Yeah,
he was
that's
flirting with those ideas in his art.
What's
It's terrible.
What's
It's depraved.
pederasty?
It's just raping of a child.
Oh.
Isn't that basically
Well,
if
you know
you're
what's
older?
weird is
isn't that
Sam
across the
Sam
board?
always says this, kind of how they flip everything on it upside down. So pedophile, the word means love child, right? Which has sexual connotations. It's disgusting, but literally the word just means you love children, right? So obviously that has a sexual connotation, which again,
No, it shouldn't. Though.
disgusting,
Love.
but-
That's dirtying, Mark. We could go with that. Dirtying the
Love
word
is
love.
probably-
Love is
yeah,
love is
exactly.
to me. Love is not sexual.
exactly. And
To
that's
me,
what
love
I
is
mean.
not
Like, the
sexual
proper
at all.
The proper term for what these people are doing is rape, not love.
That's not
That's
love.
why-
Flip it on its head.
Well, that was
And they
my
say-
point. It's all rape. No, if you're that old and it's a child, is it not?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Like,
exactly
so
my
there
point.
should only
And
be
they
one
label
fucking
it-
term.
and they label it with that love term to throw people off even further. So there's levels to this shit, and like Sam says all the time, like they flip the light and the dark. So I don't think that we can take Crowley lightly, because he definitely inspired criminals. He inspired perverts. Real people, like the guy who produced the movie Lucifer Rising, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was a real deal criminal, and he was involved with like Manson and other people. And
Mm-hmm.
Crowley inspired like the guy who founded Scientology.
Yeah.
Ron
Ron
Hubbard.
Hubbard, Jay-Z.
So,
lots of people.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people, and Kingsley too, that scumbag who basically tried to make therapy a form of pedophilia, like make pedophilia
God, I don't know
legal.
who this guy is, but he's my new hated list.
Yeah. Oh, dude, when I brought him up on Sam's podcast, he almost punched me through the computer. Like, he hates it, and I agree with him. I just, that's another reason why I'm hesitant to talk about this stuff, because when you talk about it, you have to be very serious. I mean, these are crimes. So unless you have evidence, you can't just go and call anybody a criminal of this severe nature. So I am careful.
If you were a
'cause
woman, you could.
yeah, right. So I don't have that
Wrong
benefit
podcast.
either.
Sorry.
Wrong podcast, Clint. No, but listen, Mark. I mean, like I said, you've hung out with me multiple times. You know that I come from a musical background, a lot of dark music, from dark techno and dark metal and all that. And yeah, people, they worship this man. It is before I really knew who he was.
I just had to Google him.
Yeah, no, everyone worshipped Crowley, and I didn't worship him at all, because I don't worship anyone. I stopped that shit a long time ago. I was like 10 years old when I realized, like, you don't worship anybody. But people were really into him and the whole fucking, and a lot of his ideas pre-internet, pre-serious internet, they're very new age. They make sense. Like you said, as soon as anybody's a pedophile, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you were the second coming. Like, if any of your ideas are to do with pedophilia, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? But he kind of was like Sam calls him a hack. In a way, he was a hack, because he took a lot of like Hindu ideas and he took a lot of Buddhist ideas and he kind of just threw them all together. And I stopped researching the guy once I realized like what he was really tied to. And I know that was kind of your claim to fame. And I remember that episode with Tinfoil Hat. I didn't even want to go there with you today, but now we're talking about Crowley, so we can just keep going.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
It's fine.
I definitely,
and I feel like you were like misrepresented, because you also are like just a guy who is searching for truth. And in the beginning, if you're a truth seeker, Crowley is going to be an influence on you. It's not going to be fucking Q. If it's Q, it might be Q. I mean, and God bless you if that's your thing. But in the early days, like, Crowley was it was the beginning of the truth, the occult. And occult does not mean bad.
Let me clarify this though, because I will say, like I said, I bought a lot of books over
Yeah.
my years, and the two books that have inspired me the most are The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth
Mm-hmm.
and The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall.
Yeah, maybe
Neither
Hall.
of which mention Crowley. The Secret History of the World might mention Crowley towards the end of it, but I won't say that like, oh, I got into this for that. And it is strange that like that's how I got a lot of traction with Sam, but I think that was intended because I knew like, all right, this is a subject that people are interested in, but it's also a subject that needs really careful examination, and I think I did a good job of that. And obviously we don't want to rehash everything I talked about there because people can go and listen, but I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to clarify, because there absolutely was a lot of people who reached out with negative comments like, oh, you defended Crowley, when between you and I and Sam and everybody that knows me,
Dude,
like that
yeah,
wasn't
man,
my
know the guy.
intention.
Yeah, I know this
So
guy, guys. Anybody listening, and because I know I have a lot of like, I know this guy, and once I said you don't come into my energy field if you have negative intents, and I've been around very bad people in my life. This is not a negative human. But I understand, Mark. I felt for you when I heard that podcast, because I felt for you because in my early days of searching, Crowley was someone that I came across. You guys gotta remember, I'm 41 years old. Like when I came into this, like I didn't have as much fingertip like Googling and stuff. So I would read these books, and I would and Crowley was a name that came up a lot, and I had to figure it out. It wasn't so much YouTube videos, and there wasn't all this easy to digest information. It was a lot of books. It was a lot of reading, and that was a figure that came in my life. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard, you mentioned, yeah, he came in early on too because he was part of that, and I realized that was a wacko right away once it was Scientology. But it was another name that came in, and there were some of his books that were stuff that we read, and I read, and I've been diving and for this knowledge for a long time. So
well, when you do look into Crowley, you find so much about the world. I mean, he was involved in so many things. He was involved in espionage. He was involved in the secret societies. He was involved in ritual magic groups. He was involved in Hollywood. He was influencing artists. So he really was a Renaissance man of his time, despite his perversions. I mean, you can go and read one of his books called Snowdrops, where he literally just writes all these poems that are disgusting. I mean, some of them are just pornographic, but others are literally like criminal,
oh wow, yeah,
regarding
I didn't go
regarding
I didn't go
children,
that deep. Oh,
So
wow.
there are
Yeah.
books that he has written that obviously are in a fictional context.
I never went that deep, but shit.
Yeah, so you can go that deep, right? So
No, and I
I
didn't,
don't advocate that.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
never bought that book. I just found it in a used bookstore and just happened to peruse it. But
Yeah,
the
yeah, of
evidence
course.
is there, and yeah, I mean there's definitely interest in what he's written, because he did do this kind of, like you said, like he's like a hack, but with writing, it's like he really just conglomerated all these things that weren't conglomerated before, which is useful,
Is
to
a
some
thing.
degree.
Yeah, is a thing. Exactly, man. And like, yeah, I mean that is a thing, and like you look at it, and yeah, I didn't know
You didn't know about the snowdrops?
No, I didn't know about that kind of shit. It was just more about like the magic and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
he was like a
into.
real deal pervert. I mean, that was what got him into a lot of stuff, like
Wow.
because of like his early suppression in his childhood, and he wrote about it a lot, but he couldn't write about it under his own name. I mean, even Aleister Crowley isn't his real name. His last name is Crowley, but his first name is Alexander, not Aleister. So the whole pen name, and like he had a separate pen name for his poetry, but later in life they've released it under his well-known pen name, Aleister Crowley. But yeah, you can find all types of books, and that's the disturbing thing, is there are real people who have all of his books and try to do
yeah.
his rituals.
Yeah,
and,
that's
Jimmy
real.
Jimmy Page from
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Jimmy Page, Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, there was people
Yeah.
that
What are their rituals?
ritual
Is it-
magic. Yeah.
Oh, magic.
Clint, if you want, we can talk about that. I mean, it sounds like you don't.
I know
have a
nothing.
good
Yeah,
idea of
Clint.
any of it.
Clint is a
I've
newbie on
literally
everything.
been, dude, I was in the woods trying to ride dirt bikes faster or something for all my whole
Yeah,
life.
he's a noob. So any of this stuff, it's everything is.
Yeah,
new.
I just Googled him and was just kind of like
Oh, man.
scanning it a little bit.
He's like, oh,
and I'm
shit.
like,
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
well, I
You know,
mean, there's a lot
aside-
more than you can find on Google. But yeah,
I'm
go
sure.
For it.
Well, I just wanted to Wikipedia or whatever and see even what the deal was. I like that you guys are always like, this guy doesn't know anything.
No,
about
I
this.
love it. That's
I
why you're
don't.
on the show, bro.
We literally
It's all
had a
good.
conversation today at work. This is
About Alistair Carley.
No, I didn't even. I've heard his name, but I didn't know who he was. About how, like you said before, as soon as I knew somebody, my fighter friends in Atlanta, one of the guys disappeared and had his kids in the car, and got caught meeting like what was supposed to be like a 14-year-old girl or whatever. And everybody's just like you said, disowned. Nobody's ever spoken to him ever again. You know, that was the end of it. So gnarly that
it
this
is
guy's got
very
all these books and everything out, and fucking they're still out.
Interesting.
How did they not get expunged?
No, because
Well,
this guy is the god to like a lot of like that's.
And
what's
I will
interesting.
say that he's never been convicted of any crime. There is some talk about like him like doing some messed up stuff in Italy, in this place called Cefalù, where I think he was escorted out of the country by the Italian National Police after some woman who had brought her infant child to his place, but that's all rumor. Like I said, these are very serious criminal allegations, so I don't want to be the one to be like, oh yeah, he did it or he didn't do it. And again, I don't want to defend the guy. I just want to make the record very clear this is all out there. But yeah, man, I mean, as far as rituals go, it goes from very dark stuff to like basically, I mean, people. And again, the reason why his books aren't out there is because people like doing these rituals because it gives them a sense of power, right? So they're willing to think those are all rumors because they're more interested in getting the power from his books. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Of course.
And
like
as you go,
any celebrity, right?
yeah, and as you go up the rings of power, you actually find that some of these ritual practices are inherent to being in that seat of power. Like these families that are in charge, they're not Christian, they're not Jewish, they're fucking dark arts occultists, like Sam says, and this is why Mike says that this is their god in a way. But I wouldn't agree with that sentiment. I don't think that's what you were trying to say though, Mike.
No,
I just
that's fine.
mean people do worship him, right? And
a lot of
probably
artists, man.
spilled the beans more than the royal family would have liked, which is why he did end up living his life in this drugged out state. I think we do have that, him to thank for that. Like,
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that like you look at like two figureheads, right? You look at Crowley, and then you look at Tesla. Tesla is a truther's god in a way, right? Any truther like loves Tesla, and every occultist loves, or occultist or dark arts loves Crowley. Both died in destitute. Both died like drug addicts in some hotel room with these papers. It's very interesting. The two of them were these like figureheads that one is light, one is dark, and they both have these like. And I am just fucking
Tesla
spitballing.
overdosed?
I don't know if he overdosed on fentanyl. You said that, not me.
No.
What?
But he died in a hotel room. He died in a hotel room for sure.
Yeah, no, he lost.
And he had no money, and both of them were died
government.
broke, and nobody cared about them. And my point is that both of those two is like one is light, one is dark, and it's very interesting that both like those are the two like almost. I don't know what you call. I don't want to say the word, but like messiahs, we'll call them on both sides, right? And it's very interesting.
But you
and they
said
both
occult
died.
isn't really negative.
Well, Mark, doesn't occult just mean hidden knowledge?
Well, I definitely,
I'm gonna look it up
nothing
right
against
now,
you,
but
Mike. I think diagrams are important, but I wouldn't put it in that dichotomy where like Tesla was purely this and Crowley was purely that. I think, individuals are individuals, and we all have our flaws as human beings. And I think, like I said earlier, Crowley was perverted. Nikola Tesla's a cult, right? So you're right.
Yeah,
Hidden, it's a cult, but
I'm looking it
Tesla's
up right
interacting.
now. All it means is supernatural, or magical or mystical beliefs. That's all occult
Now,
means.
but here's the thing. Now, you can interact with the occult in two different ways, like you're saying. Crowley interacted with the occult in an egotistical way. I want to get things from this. I want to be powerful from this. Whereas Tesla was like, I want to create power. I want to build powerful things.
Listen, man,
I want to give power to others,
to the people,
and that's where you
but it's
have the
interesting that
split.
those are the two like figureheads. It's very interesting that where we're
Well,
at.
there's
right
more.
now.
There's more people, but yeah, those
Yeah.
are definitely two notable people. And I would say, I don't know if their timelines line up so much, because Tesla was dead, I think, before World War II, or sometime after World War II, whereas Crowley lived until the 60s, which is why he was such a big influence on all those folks in the 60s, as well as acid and all those other things. But I think, this is just the tip of the iceberg, man. I mean, episode 33, talking about Crowley. We got to get into more occult stuff on the Free Thinkers podcast. I'd love to.
So is
come back.
33 is Rolling Rock and a occult beer?
So,
Dude, all symbols that you see in any business, this meme magic. What that means is there are certain images that your brain sees and associates with certain ideas. And the horse that's used on the Rolling Rock bottle, right? They use a horse on there, or at least they did
the
in
head
some
or
of their
something.
designs. That's an ancient symbol. I mean, the horse is pretty obvious how, it's a powerful animal. It's very utilitarian. It's gotten humans further in our abilities to travel long distances, and they're just spectacular animals. So yeah, I think absolutely they're using occult symbols in nearly any corporate logo you find. But I think also that doesn't mean that every corporation is a cult. That just means that those artists that they hired to make their logo were like, oh yeah, this would be cool. And I think that also, I'm being disingenuous, because there are certain corporations who are like, hey, we need this in our logo to kind of give the wink and the nod. So, but the occult, like Mike said, is anything hidden, and you can interact with it like Tesla and use the power to build something.
I just checked it out real quick. Just to
go for it.
So Tesla was born in 1865, died in 1943. Crowley was born in 1875, died in 1947. So they are at the same timeline.
10 years off.
Oh, okay.
So they're from the same.
That.
They're from the same timeline. No, I'm not trying. Like I said, it's not a gotcha thing.
I'm the young guy here, so
no, it's not a gotcha thing.
Better.
It's never gonna be a gotcha thing. It literally came to me while we were having this conversation. We weren't even supposed to have this conversation. I'm almost scared to put this out there, because I don't want any of our followers to think we went too dark. We just having a. You guys want real conversations. This is a real conversation. This is literally our conversations. Yes, this is our conversation.
Let me explain on why people shouldn't take this as if they're still with us and they didn't like throw their phone out their car window or something. Don't do that. Like, you need to understand the enemy to be able to conquer your enemy, right? So, and we're in a spiritual war, like Sam says.
Yes.
Like, people are constantly telling you that you're living in a material universe. Life means nothing because you're spinning on a tiny little ball.
You only live once.
And you only live once, and all these other bullshit ideas. And the fact of the matter, look into this stuff like the occult, you see that themes, there's patterns, and the main pattern that I learned is that human beings don't have one life, we have many lives, and there is an ongoing process of evolution that we're all taking consciously to make our humanity better. And with that, I mean, I hope that's a cool positive way to understand, like, that the occult isn't really a bad thing. It's just a whole set of ideas that are not publicly known.
Bro, I can't think of a better way to end this podcast. This is my boy Mark Steeves. Stevens.
Steeves, like sleeves, but with E.
That's my boy Mark Steeves. There's no better way to end this. He just fucking crushed it, guys. If you're unfriend us, is that the cool thing to say, guys?
Unfollow
Unfollow us. I'm
Friend us
sorry.
if you're triggered.
I'm sorry, but these are the conversations we need to have, and these are the conversations I'm gonna have on this podcast more and more because we don't fucking know shit about shit. Mark, thank you so much for being on here
and
today.
next time I'm gonna come there. I'm gonna
In
do
studio.
the podcast with you guys in the studio. I'm gonna bring some books so Clint can like look at like some of these things and be like, "Whoa, this is what the rituals are."
Yeah.
Because I feel like we definitely need more time to get into it. But I hope I've given you kind of the brief 101 on what you might get into. And yeah, if you're triggered, like go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
you
then
should be
don't
listening
listen.
to episode
Exactly.
33 of a podcast.
Yeah. Mark, where can everyone find you? I mean, I know where I listen to you, but go ahead.
You can check me out on myfamilythinksimcrazy.com, and that will show you all of the apps that we're on because, you can find us on all the apps. We don't really have a YouTube video presence, but if you subscribe to our Patreon, you can see the video version of every episode. And yeah, man, this has been really fun. I can't wait to get you guys on Alt Media United and fill your audience in on all that cool stuff. But we'll save that for next time too.
Listen, when you're in studio.
Yeah, Mark's the man, guys. Follow this guy. If you're a fan of us and Sam Tripoli, you're a fan of Mark. So thank you, Swarm. We love you.
Later.